There's a word that I think a lot of my Christian brothers and sisters are misusing, and it's used to describe a certain set or a group of people. And because it's misused, I think that there are giftings and vocations and callings that end up getting swept under the rug because this word gets used to identify something that I don't think the biblical authors like the Apostle Paul originally intended. This word is the word pastor. I think that we have misused the word pastor too much. For example, I think some churches have something called the pastor of marketing, the pastor of business, the creative pastor, the soul care pastor, the executive pastor, the lead pastor, the teaching pastor. Pastor gets put on titles and descriptions in churches. And one of the things I've noticed is that pastor a lot of times just gets confused with maybe in what the business world would call C-suite executives, right? The business pastor is just the CFO. The lead pastor, he's the CEO. The personnel pastor, well, that's the head of HR in most corporations, right? I think that in Christianity, we say pastor seems like a really important title. And so then we tag it on the front of a bunch of different areas of dominion and authority in the church. And we say, well, okay, well, they're the pastor of this, or they're the pastor of that, pastor of men, pastor of women, pastor of children, pastor of youth. Pastor ends up becoming a term that just means a person who has authority in a certain area. But if even think about the word pastor. If you're a Spanish speaker, my wife and I, we speak Spanish with our kids. The word pastor is the same word that you use for shepherd. Pastor and shepherd are interchangeable terms in the text, meaning that the person who is a pastor is the person who is to do what a shepherd does. They guide, they protect, they watch over, they care for. But then when you look at the job description of a business pastor, or the job description of a worship pastor, you're like, okay, well, they coordinate music sets and regular band practices, and they watch over and make sure that things are working. And obviously, there might be a facet to their job that is pastoral in that they care for people and watch over people and they do these things. But I think what happens when we use this term as just a way of saying an important person in a specific ministry, what we do is we then end up cheapening what the actual gift of pastor is. Pastor is listed. I probably need to stop holding this staff. Pastor is listed with another set of spiritual gifts and spiritual callings, such as administration, prophet, teacher, right? And a lot of times you're like, wait a second, but teacher, that's what our pastor does. He's the person who teaches on Sunday. But in the text where Paul is speaking about spiritual giftings, he says teacher and pastor are two different things. A pastor is someone who comes alongside you in life and shepherds you and guides you and walks with you and tries to protect you from the threats and dangers in life. That's what a pastor is. A pastor is a friend, a confidant, someone who goes and does life with you in a way that helps you become the best version of yourself that follows Jesus well. A teacher is a whole different set of skills. A prophet, someone who speaks truth on behalf of God, totally different set of skills and gifting. An administrator, an apostle, someone who plants churches, that's a totally different set of skills. But what we do is we took this word pastor, I don't know why, maybe that's like the more Protestant way of talking about things instead of minister or priest or whatever, but we take the word pastor and we tag it on the front of things just to say this person's really important and that's the thing they're in charge of. But maybe there are people in congregations that don't have the title. Maybe there are people in the congregation who aren't in charge of a specific ministry, who don't get a paycheck or a salary from the church, who haven't been appointed in charge of something, that have the gift of pastor. Maybe there are people in your congregation who are so good at shepherding, guiding, walking alongside people, protecting them, but they can't exercise that gift because, well, the term pastor is assigned to the C-suite executives of the church. And so maybe brothers and sisters, maybe we can actually use the word pastor to describe someone who pastors, not just someone who is the leader in a congregation. Some of the denominations use things like the presbyter, the bishop, or these other terminologies. The overseer, that term fell out of favor. But there are other ways of referring to people who are in leadership. If we're just saying that the executive pastor really is the business manager of the church, let's just be honest with ourselves and call him the business manager of the church instead of trying to spiritualize something and in turn cheapening the original meaning of what a pastor is supposed to be. So I think pastor is a great term as long as you're actually pastoring, as long as you're actually a shepherd who walks alongside people and helps them become a better person. If that's not who you're trying to describe, maybe you shouldn't be using that word anymore.